Hi there, I'm Dane Sweet. I'm out here at Guadalupe River State Park for my Geography in My Backyard video project, and I'm going to tell you about some of the natural processes going on out here. Let's get started. To start with, here we have a fine example of what we call denudation. Denudation being the process by which things are weathered and broken down into smaller pieces until they are eventually carried away by another source such as a stream or something of that sort. What we can observe here are the three processes of denudation, those being weathering, mass wasting, and then erosion. We can start with the weathering process of this, what we call a rockfall. The rocks were up there, they have fallen down. Real easy term. Weathering wise, we can't confirm exactly how this rock face was weathered. We can maybe make assumptions of something like frost wedging, which is where water gets into the little joints and cracks of the rocks, freezes in the colder nights or cold seasons, expands, and then melts again and allows more water in that space, building more and more space until the rocks can no longer support themselves and they fall right off. That can go hand in hand with something like a form of biological weathering, maybe tree roots getting in between the cracks in the rocks, breaking them right apart, growing more and more, also pushing them apart in the same manner, or even some lichens eating away at the rock face. That all can mix together and eventually give us our rock fall, leading to the mass wasting part of the rocks were right there. They fell down there, and that is where they have landed. That is our mass wasting. It has been wasted, it has been weathered away until it has fallen. As for the erosion, these larger chunks won't be eroded or moved away for quite some time. This process of denudation goes on for years, in fact. It can last a very long time. But with these rocks, any smaller pieces that may have happened when this first fell into the river have been carried away downstream and eroded down through a fluvial erosion, being erosion by water or water systems, and carried away. And that is our example of denudation firsthand with this gorgeous example of that rock fall. Let's take a look at our Guadalupe River stream. Now, I know typically when you hear the word stream, you think of a tiny little channel trickling along with water, nothing big. But when we look at it from a physical geography standpoint, a stream classifies as any channel that's carrying water, whether that be the tiniest little ditch in your yard that goes under your fence, or something as big as the Mississippi River. Everything in between and everything along with it, those are streams. When looking at our Guadalupe River stream, we want to keep in mind that the faster the water is moving, the more material it can carry and the larger that material can be. So things, dirt and gravel and pebbles, all those materials, the faster the water is moving, the more and larger those materials can be. Where this comes in when looking at a bend here in our stream, or sometimes if you're looking at a real sinuous and winding stream, or what we call a meandering stream, you'll find that the water is moving always fastest on that outside curve of this bend, and it's going to move slowest on this inside curve. And what that means is that on these slower inside curves, a lot more material is going to be deposited on these curves and left here, because the slower water is not going to carry those large materials. It has to leave them behind. So the water slows down and deposits those materials and starts to make what we refer to as a point bar, which is this accumulation of materials brought from how far upstream, however far you can imagine, and they make their way down here onto these slower curves and are deposited here, where you'll find people parking their boats and cracking open a cold one and hanging out on them, or people fishing off the edge. Now when we go to the other side, we have what we call a cut bank. Cut bank is a very simple term. It means what it says. The water is cutting into the bank of the river. Cut banks are fast, they have that faster outside edge water that is carrying more and larger material, which cuts right into the dirt and the sediment and the material that is on the edge of the river, eating away at that and cutting it further and further into that turn. And that's how we can form these wide and maneuvering meanders in real sinuous rivers, where it's being cut one way and it's being deposited on the other side the same direction, just pushing that turn further and further and further until you have those real winding meanders. Right here is a very gradual curve. And if this is ever to turn into a meander, it will be thousands of years from now. It takes much, much time for these things to happen. But that's the method at which they go. Those cut banks and point bars where they're being eaten away and deposited. While we find ourselves on this point bar, let's take a look at the material that has been deposited on it. Now we take a handful here, and we can see that mostly it's just these round little river rocks, the same little river rocks you can find at Home Depot that people buy and decorate their backyards with, make them look real nice. But we can consider, where did these rocks come from to get to this resting place right here? Chances are many of these rocks have come from miles and miles upstream and made their way down here through fluvial erosion in the stream bed. Fluvial erosion being, as we talked about, erosion through water, and making their way bit by bit through an erosion method, one of them being what we call saltation. Saltation is taking these little river rocks, and even a jagged one like this that could be fresh off of a rock face or any other weathered material, and it finds itself at the bottom of the riverbed and it just bounces along. The stream is moving it forward and it just clicks and it dink, 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 bounces along the riverbed, with each little hit taking off a little bit of that rock, eating away at it. And eventually, through much, much time of doing this and moving down this stream, miles and miles, years and years, that rock will eventually round out into what we typically imagine a river rock to be. These little round ones that smooth roll around in your hand. But this one too, you're gonna find it's gonna do the same method of saltation. It's gonna go bink, 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 and keep moving around, keep moving downstream until it gets even smaller. And it's just gonna keep eating away at it and taking chunks out of it. And this small little rock, same thing. Dink, 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 dink. It's gonna keep moving down, smaller and smaller. Or what you'll find is that, such as this one right here, it's gonna find its resting place right here on the point bar until maybe someone, such as me, takes it and gets it back into its stream, where it's gonna start saltating and eroding again. Same method, go moving down that stream. Or maybe a flood comes through and will carry more of these rocks back into the stream, taking them off of their resting place and putting them back into the erosion process. Let's move on. Up next, we have a fine example of what we call an ephemeral stream. An ephemeral stream being a stream that only fills up when water is fed into its channel through heavy precipitation. That's the only chance it'll fill up and flow, and when that precipitation dries out and stops, the stream will empty once again, in contrast to our perennial or year-round Guadalupe River stream. We can see with this ephemeral stream the sort of channel or valley that it has cut out for itself. Streams go about this cutting or forming of their valleys and channels through 4 methods, or I guess means to create them. That being deepening the valley, running through, carrying sediments, taking away, and just digging deeper and deeper and deeper, as you'd expect a river to do. Widening of the valley, same thing, it's cutting away at the sides as it flows, especially if there's heavy, heavy precipitation to really lift up that water level and just cut right at the sides of it. And then lengthening at both ends of its valley channel, both lengthening at the end of the stream where it goes into either a larger body of water or something of that sort, where it will form a delta and deposit much sediment and material down there, building more and more land, and then lengthening at the start of the channel stream, where it will dig up and up and up as that water runs deeper and deeper, kind of goes along with the deepening of the valley, just digging that line further and further up, so the start moves further and further back. We find that this ephemeral stream flows right past the camera here into the Guadalupe River and contributes to the Guadalupe River's watershed. While watershed being the system of streams and other the ways water flows ultimately into the Guadalupe River. So this stream is the last step for water to get into the Guadalupe River. But there are streams further up past this one that run into this ephemeral stream. And then streams past that one that run into that little stream that runs into this ephemeral stream and goes into the Guadalupe River. All of the water culminating ultimately a system that runs directly into the river, feeding into it and keeping it flowing the way it does. Let's move. We talked a moment ago about how tree roots could have caused some of the weathering done to that rock fall we were looking at and caused those rocks to shatter off the wall they were attached to and fall down into the river. We mentioned that being called biological weathering. Biological weathering is the process of weathering caused by plants or animals or anything organic in that sense. So we can see a great example right here of these tree roots wrapping around this rock here, this chunk of limestone, and just eating, well, rather not eating away at it, but wrapping around it, squeezing tighter and tighter and tighter, and bending this rock to its will. We talked a little bit about the joints in rocks. Rocks have these little joints where, as weird as it may sound, they're flexible in a sense. Now, we as people don't have enough strength to bend rocks to our will, but a tree over years and years and years and years has plenty of time to gradually bend this rock to its will and shape the rock how it wishes. So we can see right here the layering of this rock. It's being cracked apart, but we can see where it's been bent almost along with this tree root. It just wraps around it and is crushing it, bending it to its will until it is going to be weathered and fall apart into smaller pieces, just as weathering goes. Take some material right here, a rock, break it into smaller pieces, and it has been weathered. Along with that example of a tree root and crushing a rock by biological weathering, we have another great example right here that you can see the process that this rock is being weathered away. We can see tree roots wrapped around this side over here, wrapping right around the rock, down here going under the rock, and over there to the side, wrapping tightly around that side. And we can see right here in the middle where this rock is being cracked right in half, right down here, pieces starting to shave and come off, breaking into these smaller pieces, weathering away just from the brute and slow but heavy pressure of these tree roots crushing and wrapping around the rock, bending it to its will, as we were saying. Just a great, fine example of biological weathering via tree roots, just firsthand. Thank you so much for watching and coming out here with me to Guadalupe River State Park and allowing me to explain some of the natural processes to you that are going on out here at this beautiful, beautiful landmark. Have a great day.